This conference will now be recorded.
How you doing, Marvin?
I'm fine, Marcus. Thank you. How are you today?
All right. Well, we are back for part two today. And what I want to go through is the spreadsheet you put together. So in our last call, we had talked about looking at survivalism, prepper homesteading, off-grid lifestyles as for building an audience. And so you investigated a couple of things. Number one, could you find the content for it in RSS feeds? And number two, what would you name, what kind of brand names would you come up with for content sites for that audience? So we're going to take a look at the spreadsheet first that you came up with. And just as a refresher, the whole point of this list is for you to be able to figure out if I'm going for this audience, is there enough content from RSS feeds to keep a group active, to keep my pages active, to share in social, and to eventually build my website on autopilot. And so you look at various sources, and we're also looking at, what's the crossover for this audience. So, when we were looking at potential audiences in our last call, we looked at and ClickBank had some products like building your own solar system and natural medicines and things like that people who are living off grid or living as homesteaders or in their survival niche would be very interested in. And of course, while there's crossover between those groups, they're actually segmented audiences. So there's going to be content about survival that doesn't necessarily pertain to somebody who's just living off grid or doing homesteading. Survival can get into tactical types of things, and you're not always going to promote that kind of thing with somebody who's in homesteading. But when we look at something like solar, that is something that all of these groups would be interested in from the standpoint of promoting it. So, from the standpoint of a product selection right now in our head, we're thinking of promoting products like that. Over time, we may decide to promote something else. Of course, you have that freedom once you have the audiences. So the first thing is the content even there for us to syndicate to our site, get syndicated to our site, and then republish to our social accounts? So you spend time doing research in the survival niche, excuse me, and you looked at blogs, you looked at YouTube channels, you looked at the survival news, looks like news sites, and then you also looked at homesteading niche blogs, homesteading news sites, homesteading YouTube channels. And that's a pretty good start right there. The off-grid isn't necessarily there, but that's always something you can add to it. So you, of course, create a column of frequency, which is really, really important. So it's important to be able to upgrade or update your Facebook page and your Facebook group, your Twitter account, your YouTube channel. You want to be posting to it every day, at the very least once a day. And if you're running multiple groups to different audiences, so in this case, we might be looking at 2, 3, 4 groups. You want to make sure that you're posting to all of them every day and you have multiple opportunities to drive traffic through those posts. And some of those groups you may only post once a day. You don't necessarily have to post 3 times a day or 4 times a day in each group. It does depend on how much activity is in your group on its own. So, same thing with your page. You don't necessarily have to have something that posts every single day. So From that standpoint, you took a look through here. You have this website here with a feed that posts 4 times per day. That's pretty aggressive, and that's certainly a good one to make note of. This one is 3 times a week. This one's 3 times a day. This is twice a month. No listing on this, so that means it's probably not as frequent as we would like. So 1 post a week, 3 posts a week, etc. So it's good to take a look at all these. You do see that you're going to have enough content to post every day. You have several that are posting multiple times a day, which is great, including this one 5 times a day. So that means you'll have some diversity from the standpoint of sources that you're pulling from. So when we look at over at the YouTube channel, video per week, 1 video per week, 1 video per day, that's pretty aggressive. 1 video per day is pretty aggressive. So these are also good to note. So when you're building out your video site, you know that you have sources that are going to be able to publish every single day. There's a lot of these channels. You've made a note of a lot of these channels, which is great. You can see that the frequency pretty consistently. A couple videos a week is what it looks like. If you have enough of those that are a couple a week, then you should have plenty of content on a daily basis for your video site. So let's look at news sites. Now, I was interested to see how many you would actually find as far as a niche news site for survival. And it's interesting. How did you determine that it was a news site versus a blog? What was your determination on that?
Well, that was very challenging, indeed, because most of the content that we could find in blog website, blog website. So it was very challenging to know how to distinguish what is a news site comparing to a blog site. It depends. It was more when the information was general. I thought that it was a news site, like it wasn't directly related to the blogger, to his activities or daily activities, regular activities. It was more general information about homesteading regarding I don't know, evolution of technology and so on. So, but it was difficult.
So yeah, it's a good point. In that you're going to have some niches where you're not going to have news sites, and instead you're going to have blogs. It isn't necessarily critical to say, okay, well, this is definitely a blog versus definitely a news site. You don't necessarily need that with every niche. So if we don't ever actually have a news site and all we have is blogs, it might be the kind of thing where we create a news site using the blog content that you're pulling in. And so, it doesn't necessarily mean that every niche is going to have a news source to it. Some will, some won't. So, it's not necessarily hard and fast that we have to have news sites RSS feeds, but if they're there, it's always great to use them if we can find them. So in this case, these are probably more blog oriented, at least from what I was looking at when I reviewed these, and that's okay. I mean, we can still use them. The frequency, it looks like it was a little hard to come by, and I didn't take a deep dive into the frequency in my review. So here on homesteading, you did go through the blogs here, and again, this one seemed a little less frequency than what you were seeing over on the survival side. You do have one with 1 post per day, another one with 1 post per day. Most of these are then weekly as far as how often they post. So when you have a situation where they post weekly and not daily, you need more of them to be able to make sure you have daily content coming to your site. Is it possible that your site we'll have a day where it has no content published. Of course, yes, that's possible. Is it going to kill your site? Of course not. Is it going to kill your Facebook group to go a day without posting? No, it's not. But what we're doing is we're building a business. We're trying to build the traffic engine that is going to be sending traffic every day to your network. You need to have multiple groups, multiple pages, multiple social accounts that are sending traffic to your multiple sites. And the reason for that is you want traffic every day because you want clicks and sales every day, depending on your monetization. So it becomes really, really important that you have within your network on off-grid or whatever we end up calling this network, that you do have daily content across your sites going out and daily clicks coming from your social accounts. So again, some of these individual sites are not going to post every day. Some of your individual sites might not post every day, but your network should be posting every day. And that's the key, is to build up that network so it does it. On homesteading news, yes, this was, I'm sure, difficult because it's not really a news niche, so to speak. So I can understand not being able to find that. And I think this was probably the closest you were going to find. And it doesn't have a high frequency of publishing from what I could tell when you looked at it. So again, some situations are going to say, hey, we're not going to find news. You might create a news site in your network, like I said, and just fill it with content that comes from RSS feeds in the blog space. So we look at YouTube. Yes, there's going to be a whole lot of YouTube. You got a small sample here of channels that focus on homesteading. It's very popular. You can see from the subscribers, very popular. And so, these are actually some channels that I look at. And their frequency is weekly. So again, it's the kind of thing with a video site, you're going to actually probably need to have a lot of these channels that are feeding a video site so that you make sure you're posting at least 1 or 2 videos a day from those groups. So it might take, lining up, 15, 20 of these YouTube channels to be checking every day to post. You could also, from a standpoint, look at keywords to pull videos, things like that. But, for the most part, we want to use channels because we know what their content is going to be about. Okay, so let's take a look at brand names. And I know this is difficult for a lot of people. Sometimes I'm not that creative. I should say most of the time I'm not that creative to sit there and come up with names. And it's good that you were trying to use the niche name in the brand name, which makes it pretty obvious what it's about. And you were looking to see whether or not they had domains and social accounts available. You did check the domains, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So we can always play with this list, but these are some ideas. You're going to probably need 2 or 3 names minimally to come up with if you're going to use domains. But we're also going to talk about buying expired domains. So before we buy any of these, we're going to see about buying expired domains. And we'll do that in another video when we start talking about setting up sites.
Okay.
Any questions about that so far?
No, great. I think it's very important to have information about the frequency of the posting, so we can make sure that we have daily posts on our network. And
right.
Yes, that's very important.
Correct.
And as you said, some niches, they don't have news sites, so but YouTube, we have to focus on YouTube because there's more content production here on YouTube.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. Very good. Good. Okay, so let's talk about setting up our social accounts, right? So to a certain extent, we're looking at these names and we're saying, well, we want to create branded social accounts. How are we going to do that if we don't have a domain name, and that's true. But what I'm going to talk about right now is not necessarily setting up a branded Facebook page for our site. I'm going to talk about, our audience pages. So, yes, I think every brand has to have its own social accounts, and that's definitely something we're going to cover, although with less detail because it's not as important as covering and making sure that we're creating pages and groups that are more audience oriented. So right now we have two. We have survivalist and we have homesteading. So there is a process to creating a Facebook group that really involves first creating a Facebook page. There's also Twitter, there's also YouTube, right? It's for audiences. And our first Facebook page, Twitter account, YouTube, etc., doesn't necessarily have to match our brand because we're trying to build audiences and we're going to be sharing our content to them anyway. But we're going to be sharing other content as well. So we will be creating those branded accounts once we have our domain names. But for now, we want to get started. We want to start priming the pump, so to speak. So we're going to start with really two segments of our niche. So we're going to have homesteading and we're going to have survivalist. When we look at, I like to use BuzzSumo when I'm looking at content categories just to see kind of what's related. I look for relationships, and this part is important for me. Now, I think you can get some of this information using their free account. You can do a free trial. I'm sorry, they don't have a free account, but you can use their homepage and their tools for free for a little bit. And you need to clear your cookies if you want to use it for free again. BuzzSumo is great for finding content and finding trends and things like that. But it is, you have to pay for it. And I think, unless you're using it with high frequency, you've got to figure out for yourself if it's worth the money to you to do that. Is it worth the money to me? I'm doing enough research where, from my agency perspective, that's what pays for it. But, in this particular case, that may not be something you need to do. We talked about other tools for finding trends. We talked about the audience insights tool on Facebook, which is really helpful. So, when we're trying to think of like names, though, it's good to know, related types of topics. So when I type in survivalism, there's survival techniques, zombie apocalypse, deserted island. Apocalypse seems to come up a lot, but, I don't know that I'm necessarily going to use apocalypse in my name of my Facebook page. But we might want to do something like, we are survivalists, something like that. So we can go over to Facebook, and what we can try to do is, from our profile page, we want to create a page. Okay, so we start with a page first before we create a group, because our page is actually going to be connected to our group. That's, now I know that there's a direct zap for group, but that's not the reason for doing this. It's a great way when we get people liking our page, we can automatically invite them to like our group via posting on our page. So, and we can send them invites by clicking on and invite them to join our group once they've connected with our page. We'll get more into that when we're talking about growing our page, but for now, let's start with creating a page. So page name, what do we want to call it? So let's start with something like we are survivalists. Are you okay with that name?
Yes, sounds good.
So we can say survivalism. this is where your keywords come in, are important.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't necessarily provide a category there. We are independent, survival minded, people who are always looking for we could say products and tactics to make survival situations manageable. Okay, we can always go back and change that, but we're trying to include keywords that we know, our audience is going to be interested. So we have survivalists, we have survivalism, we have survival, we have tactics. I'm sure there's other things we can add. Okay, so looks like they don't like my category. So let's see if we can just do local service. It used to be you had a more of a selection. I usually have my VAs create pages and things like that, so I'm sure they've adapted to this, but we can always change this category in the future.
Yeah.
So let's see here. So we can start by adding a picture. So we can add a profile picture. This is something where, I would go into story blocks or you could go into one of your free image services and add an image for a profile pic. And a cover photo, and that's something you can do on your time. I'll make you an admin of this page, when we're done here. So, all right, so let's see here. We'll go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and like the page. It's not going to let me do that from here. That's a preview. Okay, so we're going to need to go to my home, see if it shows up. There we go. Okay, so we're now in this page. It's obviously saying, we're gonna, so I'm gonna go ahead and invite some friends to like this page. Let's see, Marvin, if you're in here. You're not my friend?
Not yet.
Oh, no. Okay, well, I gotta, are you in Facebook?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So
Marvelous is marvelous.
oh, that's right, marvelous. That's right.
Marvelous GB.
There you are. Oh, okay. So I gotta add you as a friend. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, so did you accept that already?
Yes, request accepted, of course.
This used to not work for anybody with less than 25 likes, so we're gonna see what happens here. Okay, so it says I'm not going to play around with the username right now. We can always fix that later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now I got to invite friends. Let's see if Marvelous JB is in here now. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and invite you. Okay, so the next, once you're added, I'll be adding you as an admin to this page. And then what you'll need to do is actually add a profile photo and add a cover photo up here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to go into Zapier, and we're going to create a Zap where we are adding content from your sheets to our page. So this one is 4 posts per day.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go ahead and grab that one. So we'll go ahead and grab that one. Here we go. Post RSS items to create page posts. So we're going to go ahead and do that. All right, so if I hit try it. I don't know why I had to click that button so many times to get it to do something there, but feed URL, I'm going to enter it here.
Okay.
No username or password. Let's just double check that I don't need a username or password to see that feed. Looks like it's publicly available. Okay, so when we start out using this feed, it's just going to be excerpted, which means it's only the first paragraph. The user is going to have to click through to this website to actually read the rest of that. When we begin adding these feeds to a Yive site, that feed is going to be a full feed, meaning that Yive site will pull this feed in. It will pull the entire content from each article, and you'll be able to assign images to swap in there, and then you'll use the Yive site's RSS feed for that site in this app instead. So you'll be getting the full article in your Yive site and be able to direct people to the full article on your website. So we don't need that. We don't need a username and password. Let's see. Okay, the URL update would be fine. So we're going to set up a trigger. Yep, this is fine. All right, choose. So we're going to create page post. It's going to ask us to choose an account. It's going to ask me to reconnect. Most of my pages are actually in a completely different account, which I'm keeping hidden from everybody who's watching this video. So I'm keeping this in my personal, just for purposes of this video. Okay, so we got that in there. All right, it's going to ask, what do we want to show? We're going to show the title, we're going to show the description, we're going to show the link, and that's fine for now. Page, okay, so we got to choose a page, and we're going to choose there we go. Okay, so we've chosen our page, title, description, link, hit continue. So this is what it will look like. So it'll go to this page, here's the message. And so they have a little disclaimer here they put in their feed. So it says use of this feed is personal, non-commercial use only. But here's the thing. This is actually available to be shared, and we're sharing directly in this. And that's the point of RSS feeds, to make sure that their content is being syndicated. Most of the time when people complain about this, it's like simple, just take it out of the RSS feed. Because you don't need an RSS feed to post your own content to your social accounts. The point of it, though, is not altering the content, or at least giving them credit for the content, which is something you can do when you add the feeds to the Yive sites. So you can test. And then we turn on that Zap. Okay. All right, so now in Zapier, we've set up to go ahead and post. We've gone ahead and we've set up this Zap to post to Facebook. And it doesn't necessarily post right away. And when you use a free Zapier, I think it checks every 15 minutes, something like that. Of course, until I check this box, not to show this again, every time I go to refresh the page, it's going to ask me to, do this stuff, which, you can do. So it's gone ahead and it's posted the first Zapier with about making the bread. Okay. So now we know Zapier is going to check the feed, and whenever there's a new item, it's going to post it to this page, right? We don't have any followers to our page yet, and we're going to talk about that in another video. But as you can see, this is how you will get content posted. So now, what you want to do is you're going to be repeating this process for can be the other feeds. You can add them using Zapier. But you also want to create your homesteading Facebook page. And I think those two audiences are fine for now, but eventually you want to expand that out to more audiences. And then once we've got some audience built up for our page, we will then create a group. And then we will also, for those who are interested in set up a campaign to actually promote the page to get more followers to the page. Okay? So the next assignment for you is to create the Facebook page. I'm sorry, to create to complete these profile images and the cover image, and then create Facebook page for homesteading.
Okay.
And then you'll want to create a Twitter account for both of those as well.
Okay.
And YouTube accounts for those as well. Okay.
Okay.
And then once you've got them created, you're going to go into Zapier, and you're going to create a Zap to take these RSS items. You're going to connect them to the Facebook page, to the Twitter accounts, and to the YouTube channel. Actually, I'm sorry, you can't connect it to the YouTube channel. We're actually going to do that using Yive. So once the YouTube channels are created, we'll get them added to your Yive video account, and then you will be adding the RSS items to make videos to add to your Yive or to your YouTube account. So for now, it's Facebook and Twitter. Get those feeds set up to post to those accounts. Get those accounts all set up and looking good. And then in the next video, we're going to talk about setting up a group using these pages once they're all finished out. So we'll have 1 to 2 groups that we'll set up using these pages, and then we will also invite more people to our pages, and then we will also invite them to join to our groups, and we will start a small campaign just to show people how to do it if they want to start getting followers on our pages and getting them into our groups. So the whole idea here is we're going to come away with some pages and groups set up with people following our content, so that when our sites are set up, we can plug our sites right in and start getting clicks as well. So any questions on that?
No, it's clear. It's clear. Regarding the Twitter account and so on, do you recommend to use a brand new email account for this, or you have to use your personal account? It depends for people who already have, for example, a Twitter account. It should be separate.
Yeah, I would say you want new, whether it's a Gmail account or an Outlook account or a Hotmail or whatever, free email that you can create an account there and then create your Twitter account from it.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. It's
okay.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. So once you've been able to go through and do those homework items, we'll schedule the next training to go through the next step.
Okay. Thank you, Marcus.
All right. Great. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye.
This conference will now be recorded.
How you doing, Marvin?
I'm fine, Marcus. Thank you. How are you today?
All right. Well, we are back for part 2 today. And what I want to go through is the spreadsheet you put together. So in our last call, we had talked about looking at survivalism, prepper homesteading, off-grid lifestyles as for building an audience. And so you investigated a couple of things. Number 1, could you find the content for it in RSS feeds? And number 2, what would you name? What kind of brand names would you come up with for content sites for that audience? So we're going to take a look at the spreadsheet first that you came up with. And just as a refresher, the whole point of this list is for you to be able to figure out if I'm going for this audience, is there enough content from RSS feeds to keep a group active, to keep my pages active, to share in social, and to eventually build my website on autopilot. And so you look at various sources, and we're also looking at